Alexander Blackwood stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a glittering circuit board. At 31, he commanded a tech empire worth $12 billion, owned properties on 4 continents, and had been featured on magazine covers as America's most eligible bachelor for 3 consecutive years. Yet as he prepared for another charity gala where beautiful women would compete for his attention, Alexander felt nothing but exhaustion. His walk-in closet contained dozens of designer tuxedos, each worth more than most people's monthly salary, but they all felt like costumes for a role he no longer wanted to play. His assistant had briefed him on tonight's attendees: supermodels, actresses, socialites, and heiresses, all stunning, all accomplished, all eager to become the next Mrs. Blackwood. The prospect filled him with dread rather than anticipation. Alexander's phone buzzed with messages from women he'd dated casually, each hoping to be his +1 for Victoria, the fashion designer who spoke only of herself; Sophia, the art gallery owner who saw him as a walking investment opportunity; Camille, the pharmaceutical heiress who treated their relationship like a merger negotiation. Each woman was beautiful, intelligent, and successful in her own right. Each had everything society deemed valuable, yet none had ever made Alexander feel anything beyond polite interest. He'd begun to wonder if he was incapable of genuine connection, if his wealth had insulated him so completely from authentic human emotion that he'd forgotten how to feel. The irony wasn't lost on him that the man who'd revolutionized social networking technology felt utterly disconnected from everyone around him. His apps brought millions of people together, but Alexander himself remained isolated in his tower of success. As his driver waited downstairs to take him to another evening of superficial conversations and calculated charm, Alexander found himself longing for something he couldn't name, something real, something unpolished, something that didn't want anything from him except his genuine presence. He had no idea that his search for authenticity would lead him to a small diner in Queens, where a tired waitress would change his understanding of what it meant to be truly wealthy. Chapter 2. The Escape. The charity gala unfolded exactly as Alexander had predicted. Designer gowns, champagne flutes, and conversations that felt like elaborate performances. Women approached him with practiced smiles and rehearsed compliments, each interaction feeling more artificial than the last. "Alexander, darling," Victoria glided toward him in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. "You look absolutely divine tonight. I've been dying to tell you about my new collection. It's inspired by tech innovation, and I thought perhaps we could collaborate." Alexander smiled politely while internally calculating how quickly he could escape. Around him, New York's elite mingled and networked, their laughter sharp and their conversations peppered with name-dropping and subtle boasts about wealth and connections. By 10 o'clock, Alexander had endured enough. He slipped away from the ballroom, ignoring his security detail's protests, and walked out into the Manhattan night. Instead of calling his driver, he hailed a taxi, something he hadn't done in years. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Just drive," Alexander said, loosening his bow tie. "Anywhere but here." The taxi wound through the city, past the glittering towers of Manhattan and across the Queensboro Bridge. Alexander watched the landscape change from gleaming skyscrapers to modest neighborhoods, from luxury boutiques to corner bodegas. The contrast was jarring and somehow comforting. When they stopped at a red light near a small diner called Mel's 24 Hour, Alexander made an impulsive decision. "Let me out here." The diner was a stark contrast to the 5-star restaurants Alexander usually frequented. Vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of coffee that had been brewing for hours. It was exactly what he needed, a place where no one would recognize him, where he could simply exist without performance or pretense. Alexander slid into a corner booth, still wearing his tuxedo, but feeling more relaxed than he had all evening. The other patrons, night shift workers, taxi drivers, insomniacs, paid him no attention. For the first time in months, Alexander felt invisible in the best possible way. A waitress approached with a coffee pot and a tired but genuine smile. She was pretty in an understated way, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that looked like they'd seen both kindness and struggle. "Coffee?" she asked simply, already reaching for the cup on his table. "Please," Alexander said, struck by how refreshing it was to have someone offer him something without an agenda. The waitress, her name tag read Maya, poured his coffee and moved on to other tables without lingering or trying to start a conversation. Alexander found her professional efficiency oddly soothing. Chapter 3. Simple Pleasures. Alexander found himself returning to Mel's diner the following week, then again 3 days later. Each visit was unplanned, usually occurring after particularly draining business meetings or social obligations. The diner became his refuge from a world that constantly demanded his attention and performance. Maya served him with the same quiet efficiency each time, never showing recognition or treating him differently than any other customer. Alexander began to look forward to these brief, uncomplicated interactions, more than he anticipated board meetings or social events. "You're becoming a regular," Maya observed one Thursday evening as she refilled his coffee. It was nearly midnight, and the diner was quiet except for a few other late-night patrons. "I suppose I am," Alexander replied, surprised by how much he enjoyed this simple acknowledgement. "Rough day?" Maya asked, noting his loosened tie and the exhaustion in his eyes. "Something like, you?" Maya shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both resignation and resilience. "Every day's rough when you're working 3 jobs, but coffee helps." Alexander was struck by her matter-of-fact tone. She wasn't complaining or seeking sympathy, just stating a reality that was foreign to his experience. 3 jobs, diner shifts, weekend catering, and I clean offices early mornings. Gotta do what you gotta do. The casual way Maya discussed her circumstances made Alexander acutely aware of how different their worlds were. While he worried about stock prices and acquisition deals, she was simply trying to survive. "What about school? Career goals?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious. "Had to drop out of nursing school when my mom got sick. Medical bills don't pay themselves." Maya's voice carried no bitterness, just practical acceptance. Alexander felt something shift inside his chest, a combination of admiration for her strength and shame at his own privileged concern. "I'm sorry. That must be difficult." "Life's difficult for most people. You just keep moving forward." Maya moved on to serve other customers, leaving Alexander to contemplate her words. In his world, problems were solved with money and connections. In Maya's world, problems were endured with grace and determination. As Alexander sat in the vinyl booth, sipping coffee that cost less than the tip he usually left at expensive restaurants, he realized he was experiencing something he'd forgotten existed: genuine human connection without ulterior motives. Maya didn't know who he was, didn't want anything from him, and treated him with the same respectful efficiency she showed everyone. In a life filled with people who saw dollar signs when they looked at him, Maya's indifference was the most attractive quality he'd ever encountered. Chapter 4. Growing Curiosity. Alexander's visits to Mel's diner became more frequent, and he found himself timing his arrivals to coincide with Maya's shifts. He told himself it was simply because she made good coffee, and the diner provided peaceful anonymity, but he was beginning to acknowledge deeper motivations. Maya remained professionally friendly, but distant, never lingering at his table longer than necessary or attempting to engage in personal conversation. Her restraint only increased Alexander's fascination. In a world where people constantly sought his attention, Maya's polite disinterest was magnetic. One evening, Alexander arrived to find Maya serving a table of construction work were clearly regular. He watched her laugh at their jokes, remember their usual orders, and treat them with genuine warmth. The contrast between her animated interactions with them and her polite efficiency with him was striking. "The usual?" Maya asked when she reached his table. "Coffee pot already in." "Actually, what do you recommend?" "I've been ordering the same thing every time." Maya paused, studying his face as if trying to determine whether he was serious. "The apple pie is good. Mel makes it himself, and it's better than it has any right to be in a place like this." "Then I'll have the apple pie." When Maya returned with a generous slice topped with vanilla ice cream, Alexander was surprised by how much he enjoyed the simple dessert. It was nothing like the elaborate confections served at the restaurants he usually frequented. It was warm, honest, and satisfying in a way that expensive food rarely was. "Good choice?" Maya asked, noticing his empty plate when she returned to clear it. "Excellent choice. Thank you for the recommendation." Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she directed at him, and Alexander felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. "Mel will be pleased. He takes pride in that pie. Have you worked here long?" 2 years. It's steady work, and Mel's a good boss. Lets me pick up extra shifts when I... Alexander wanted to ask more questions about her mother's illness, her abandoned nursing dream, her life outside the diner, but Maya's body language suggested she preferred to keep their interactions professional. As she moved away to serve other customers, Alexander found himself watching her. Maya was efficient without being rushed, kind without being overly familiar, and competent in a way that suggested she took pride in doing her job well regardless of its prestige. For the first time in years, Alexander was genuinely curious about another person. Not their net worth or social connections, but their thoughts, dreams, and daily experiences. Maya's world was completely foreign to his, yet something about her quiet strength and authentic presence made him want to understand it better. Chapter 5. Unexpected Kindness. Alexander's fascination with Maya deepened when he witnessed her interact with other customers during his regular visits. She remembered the elderly man's preference for decaf, knew the night nurse's usual order before she asked, and always had a kind word for the taxi drivers who stopped in during their shifts. One particularly busy evening, Alexander watched Maya handle a difficult customer with remarkable grace. A businessman, clearly intoxicated and belligerent, was berating her about the speed of service and making inappropriate comments about her appearance. "Sir, I understand you're frustrated," Maya said calmly, never raising her voice or losing her professional demeanor. "Let me get your order right out." The man continued his verbal assault, growing louder and more obnoxious. Other customers began to stare, and Alexander felt his protective instincts surge. He was about to intervene when Mel, the diner's owner, emerged from the kitchen. "That's enough," Mel said firmly to the drunk customer. "Pay your check and leave. Maya doesn't deserve that treatment." After the man left, Alexander watched Maya take a moment to compose herself before returning to work, as if nothing had happened. Her resilience impressed him more than any business negotiation he'd ever witnessed. "You handled that well," Alexander said when Maya came to fill his coffee. "Part of the job," Maya replied with a slight shrug. "People have bad days, no point taking it personally. Still, you didn't deserve that treatment." Maya looked at him with surprise, as if she wasn't accustomed to customers defending her. "Thank you. That's kind of you to say." The brief exchange marked a shift in their relationship. Alexander began to see past Maya's professional facade to the person underneath, someone who faced daily challenges with dignity and treated others with kindness, even when they didn't reciprocate. A week later, Alexander arrived at the diner to find Maya looking particularly tired. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual efficient movements seemed slower. "Long day?" he asked when she brought his coffee. "Long week. Mom had a doctor's appointment today and the news wasn't great. Sometimes it feels like we're fighting a losing battle." The vulnerability in Maya's voice caught Alexander off guard. For the first time, she'd shared something personal, and he felt honored by her trust. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything, if you need anything?" Maya's expression softened. "That's sweet of you, but we manage. We always do." As Alexander left the diner that night, he found himself thinking not about quarterly projections or acquisition targets, but about Maya's quiet strength and the unfairness of a system where someone so kind and hardworking struggled while he had more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. Chapter 6. Crossing Lines. Alexander's concern for Maya began to extend beyond their brief diner interactions. He found himself researching medical treatment options and financial assistance programs, though he wasn't sure how to offer help without overstepping boundaries or revealing his true identity. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Alexander arrived at the diner one evening to find Maya's usual station covered by another waitress, a teenager who seemed overwhelmed by the dinner rush. "Where's Maya?" Alexander asked when the girl finally reached his table. "She had to leave early. Some kind of family emergency," the waitress replied, already hurrying away to handle other customers. Alexander felt an unfamiliar anxiety settle in his chest. Without fully planning his actions, he left money for his untouched coffee and walked out of the diner. Maya had mentioned living in the neighborhood, and though he didn't have her address, he found himself walking the nearby streets, unsure what he was looking for. He found her sitting on the steps of a modest apartment, still wearing her uniform, her head in her hands. Even from a distance, Alexander could see her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Maya?" he called softly, approaching carefully. She looked up, startled, and quickly wiped her eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I was worried when you weren't at the diner. Are you okay?" Maya studied his face, perhaps wondering why a customer would care enough to seek her out. "My mom had another episode. The ambulance came, and I had to leave work to meet them at the hospital. Is she all right?" "For now. But the doctor says she needs a procedure we can't afford. Insurance will cover part of it." "But..." Maya's voice trailed off, and she looked away. Alexander sat down beside her on the concrete steps, his expensive suit incongruous against the urban setting. "How much do you need?" "I can't ask you for money. I don't even know your name." "It's Alexander." "And you're not asking. I'm offering." Maya turned to face him fully, her eyes searching his face. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." Alexander struggled to articulate feelings he barely understood himself. "Because you're kind to everyone who walks into that diner, even when they don't deserve it. Because you work 3 jobs to take care of your mother without complaining. Because in a world full of people who want things from me, you've never asked for anything." "What do you mean, people who want things from you?" Alexander realized he'd revealed more than he intended. "I just mean, I can help, and I want to. Please let me help." Maya was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with pride and desperation. "I can't pay you back." "I don't want you to pay me back." "Then what do you want?" Alexander looked into her tired, honest eyes and realized the truth. "I want to know that you and your mother are okay. That's all." Maya's resistance finally crumbled. "The procedure costs $15,000. We have $3,000 saved." Alexander nodded, already calculating how to transfer the money without revealing the extent of his wealth. "Consider it done." Chapter 7. Revelations. The next morning, Maya received a call from the hospital's billing department informing her that an anonymous donor had covered the full cost of her mother's procedure. When she arrived at the diner for her shift, she found Alexander waiting in his usual booth. "It was you," she said without preamble, sliding into the seat across from him. "I don't know what you mean. The hospital bill. Someone paid it in full this morning." Alexander met her gaze steadily. "Your mother needed the procedure. Now she can have it." "Who are you?" Maya asked, her voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "Really?" Alexander had been dreading this moment while simultaneously longing for it. "Does it matter?" "It matters because normal people don't just hand out $15,000 to strangers. It matters because I've been serving you coffee for months without knowing anything about you except that you tip well and like apple pie. What would you like to know?" Maya studied his face, noting details she'd overlooked before. The quality of his clothes, the expensive watch, the way he carried himself with unconscious authority. "Start with what you do for work." "I run a technology company." "What kind of technology company?" Alexander hesitated, knowing that his next words would change everything between them. "The kind that's made me more money than I know what to do with." Maya's expression shifted as understanding dawned. "How much money?" "Enough that $15,000 is like you buying someone a cup of coffee." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Maya's face cycled through emotions: shock, embarrassment, anger, and something that might have been betrayal. "You've been lying to me." "I never lied. I just didn't volunteer information you didn't ask for. You let me serve you coffee and complain about working 3 jobs while you're sitting there with more money than I'll see in my lifetime." Alexander felt the fragile connection they'd built beginning to fracture. "Maya, please." "Please what? Please pretend this isn't weird and uncomfortable? Please act like we're equals when we're obviously not?" "We are equal. Money doesn't change who you are as a person." Maya stood up, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Maybe not, but it changes everything else." As Maya walked away to serve other customers, Alexander realized that his wealth, the thing that attracted everyone else in his life, had just become the barrier that might cost him the one genuine connection he'd found. He sat in the booth for another hour, hoping Maya would return to continue their conversation, but she avoided his section for the rest of her shift. When Alexander finally left the diner, he wasn't sure if he'd saved Maya's mother or lost Maya herself. Chapter 8: The Distance. For a week, Alexander stayed away from the diner, giving Maya space to process his revelation, while he grappled with his own conflicted emotions. He'd wanted her to know the truth, but he hadn't anticipated how much her reaction would hurt. His regular life felt more hollow than ever. Board meetings, social events, and business dinners all seemed pointless compared to the simple pleasure of talking with Maya over coffee. Alexander found himself declining invitations and leaving work early, but he had nowhere to go that felt meaningful. When he finally returned to Mel's diner, Maya was there, but her demeanor had changed completely. She served him with the same polite efficiency she showed all customers, but the warmth and growing familiarity were gone. "The usual?" she asked, not meeting his eyes. "Maya, can we talk? I'm working. When do you get off? I have another job to get to." Alexander left a $100 tip, an amount that would have been generous but not shocking from a regular customer, but which now felt like an awkward display of wealth. Maya stared at the money for a long moment before pocketing it without comment. The pattern continued for several visits. Alexander would come to the diner, Maya would serve him professionally but distantly, and he would leave feeling more isolated than before he'd met her. Finally, Alexander decided to address the situation directly. He waited outside the diner until Maya's shift ended, approaching her as she walked to the bus stop. "Maya, please, can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about." "I think there is. You're angry with..." Maya stopped walking and turned to face him. "I'm not angry. I'm embarrassed." "Why?" "Because I complained to you about money problems while you were sitting there with billions of dollars. Because I accepted your help when I thought you were just a kind stranger, not someone for whom that money was meaningless." "It wasn't meaningless. It meant everything to me because it helped you." "That's easy to say when $15,000 is pocket change." Alexander felt frustration building. "So what would you prefer? That I had let your mother go without the procedure?" "I would prefer that you had been honest with me from the beginning. If I had told you who I was the first night we met, would you have treated me the same way?" Maya was quiet for a moment, and Alexander could see her considering the question honestly. "Probably not. That's why I didn't tell you. For the first time in years, someone was treating me like a normal person instead of a bank account with legs." "But we're not normal people, Alexander. You're a billionaire and I'm a waitress. Those aren't roles we can just set aside." "Why not? When we're talking, when we're just two people having a conversation, why does it matter what's in my bank account?" Maya looked at him with sadness in her eyes. "Because it matters to the rest of the world, and eventually it would matter to us too." Chapter 9: Understanding. Despite Maya's words about their fundamental incompatibility, Alexander continued visiting the diner. He couldn't stay away, and gradually, Maya's rigid politeness began to soften into something resembling their previous dynamic. One evening, Alexander arrived to find the diner unusually quiet. Maya was wiping down tables, and only a few other customers occupied the booths. "Slow night?" Alexander asked, as Maya brought his coffee. "People are home with their families." "It's nice, actually. Gives me time to think." "What do you think about?" Maya paused in her cleaning, considering whether to answer honestly. "Lately? About how strange life is. A month ago, my biggest worry was making rent. Now my mom's getting the medical care she needs, and I'm having philosophical conversations with a billionaire. Do you regret it? Accepting my help? No. My mom is alive because of you. I could never regret that." Maya sat down across from him, a gesture that felt significant after days of maintained distance. "But it's complicated." "How so?" "Because now I know what it feels like to have problems solved with money, and it's addictive. It makes me understand why people chase wealth so desperately." Alexander was struck by her insight. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Trying to solve problems with money? Aren't you? You saw that I was struggling, and you fixed it with a check. I saw that someone I cared about was in pain, and I did what I could to help." Maya's expression softened at his words. "You care about me? More than I probably should, given our circumstances." "What does that mean?" Alexander struggled to articulate feelings that were new and complicated. "It means that I think about you when I'm not here. It means that talking to you is the best part of my day. It means that I've never met anyone who makes me want to be a better person just by being themselves." Maya was quiet for a long moment, processing his confession. "Alexander, I need you to understand something. I'm not like the women you usually date. I don't have a college degree or a trust fund or connections. I work 3 jobs and live in a studio apartment with my sick mother. I know all that. And it doesn't bother you? The only thing that bothers me is that you think those things matter to me." Maya studied his face, searching for signs of insincerity. "In your world, they do matter. Money, status, education, those are the currencies people trade in. Maybe in my world, but not in my heart." The simple honesty of his statement seemed to break through Maya's defenses. "This is crazy, you know. Whatever this is between us. I know, it probably won't work. Probably not. So why do we keep trying?" Alexander reached across the table and took her hand, noting how small and work-worn it felt in his. "Because sometimes, the most impossible things are the most worth fighting for." Chapter 10. Taking Chances. Maya's resistance to Alexander's attention gradually gave way to cautious acceptance of their growing connection. She agreed to let him drive her home after her shifts, and their conversations during these rides became the foundation of a deeper understanding between them. Alexander learned about Maya's childhood, her dreams of becoming a nurse, and her fierce devotion to her. Maya discovered that beneath Alexander's wealth and success was a man who felt isolated by his achievements and longed for genuine human connection. "I've been thinking about what you said," Maya told him as they sat in his car outside her apartment, "about impossible things being worth fighting for. And I think you might be right, but I need you to understand what you're getting into. Tell me. My life is complicated. My mom needs constant care, and that's not going to change. I work multiple jobs because I have to, not because I want to. I don't have time for fancy dinners or social events or whatever it is that billionaires do for fun." Alexander turned to face her fully. "Maya, I don't want to change your life. I want to be part of it. What does that look like practically?" "I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out if you're willing." Maya was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but we do this my way, at my pace. No expensive gifts, no trying to solve all my problems with money." "Agreed. And you have to meet my mother." Alexander felt a flutter of nervousness. "When?" "Now, if you want. She's probably still awake." Maya's apartment was small but clean, filled with medical equipment and the warm smell of home-cooked food. Her mother, Elena, was a small woman with kind eyes and Maya's same quiet strength. "Mom, this is Alexander, the friend I told you about." Elena studied Alexander with the sharp gaze of a mother protecting her daughter. "The one who helped with the medical bills?" "Yes, ma'am. Sit down. Let me look at you properly." Alexander found himself being interrogated with gentle but thorough questions about his intentions, his background, and his understanding of Maya's responsibilities. Elena's protective instincts were clear, but so was her love for her daughter. "She's special, my Maya," Elena said finally. "She gave up her dreams to take care of me." "I know she's special," Alexander replied. "That's why I'm here." "Good answer," Elena said with a small smile. "You can stay for dinner." As Alexander sat at Maya's small kitchen table, eating homemade soup and listening to mother and daughter tease each other gently, he realized he'd never felt more at home anywhere in his life. This was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not just love, but belonging. Not just connection, but family. Chapter 11. New Beginnings. Over the following months, Alexander and Maya built a relationship that defied conventional expectations. Instead of expensive restaurants, they shared meals at the diner or in Maya's small apartment. Rather than attending galas and social events, they spent evenings reading together or watching movies with Elena. Alexander discovered that Maya's world, while materially simple, was rich with genuine relationships and meaningful moments. Her neighbors knew each other's names, her co-workers looked out for one another, and her mother's friends formed a supportive community that wealth couldn't buy. "You're different when you're here," Maya observed one evening as they sat on her fire escape, looking out over the Queen's skyline. "Different how?" "Relaxed. Real. Like you're not performing for anyone." Alexander realized she was right. In Maya's world, he could simply be himself. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Alexander. "I feel more like myself here than I do anywhere else. Even though we don't have much, especially because you don't need much. You've taught me the difference between having everything and having enough." Maya leaned against his shoulder, a gesture that still felt miraculous to Alexander. "What happens now? With us, I mean. What do you want to happen?" "I want to keep building this. Whatever this is." Alexander had been thinking about their future constantly, trying to envision how their different worlds could merge. "I have an idea, but I want to run it by you first." "What kind of idea?" "I've been thinking about starting a foundation. Healthcare assistance for families dealing with medical bankruptcies. You could run it if you wanted. Use your experience to help other people in situations like yours." Maya pulled back to look at him. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to turn your experience into something that could help thousands of people. And yes, it would pay enough that you could quit the other jobs and focus on what you're passionate about, which is taking care of people. You do it naturally, with your mother, with customers at the diner, with everyone you meet." Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering the possibility. It would mean working together. It would mean building something together, something meaningful. "And us? What happens to us?" Alexander took her hands in his, feeling the calluses from her work and loving them because they represented her strength. "I love you, Maya. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like." "I love you too," Maya said softly, "but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that this isn't about saving me or fixing my life. Promise me that you love me as I am, not as a project. I promise." "Maya, you don't need saving. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You saved yourself, and somehow, you saved me too." As they kissed on the fire escape, with the city lights twinkling around them, Alexander realized that he'd finally found what every woman in the city had been trying to offer him. Not wealth or status or beauty, but something infinitely more valuable. A love that asked for nothing, but gave everything. Chapter 12. Ever after 2 years later, Alexander stood in the same diner where he'd first met Maya, but everything had changed. The space had been renovated and expanded, now serving as both a restaurant and the headquarters for the Blackwood Santos Foundation, which provided medical financial assistance to families in crisis. Maya moved through the space with confidence and purpose, coordinating with staff members and reviewing applications from families seeking help. She'd completed her nursing degree through an accelerated program and now oversaw both the foundation's operations and its direct care services. "How many families did we help this month?" Alexander asked, joining Maya at the desk where she was reviewing reports. 47, Maya replied, her face glowing with satisfaction, "including a single father whose daughter needed heart surgery and a grandmother raising her grandchildren who couldn't afford her cancer treatments." Alexander felt the familiar surge of pride and love watching Maya in her element. She'd transformed from a struggling waitress into a confident leader, but she'd retained all the qualities that had first attracted him: her kindness, her strength, and her ability to see the humanity in everyone she met. "The board meeting went well," Alexander reported. "They approved the expansion into 3 new cities. That's wonderful. We'll be able to help so many more people." Elena, now in remission and working part-time at the foundation, approached with a stack of thank you letters from families they'd assisted. "These came in today's mail," she said, her voice warm with pride for her daughter's work. Alexander watched Maya read through the letters, her eyes filling with tears at the gratitude expressed by people whose lives had been changed by their foundation. This was wealth in its truest form, not the accumulation of money, but the multiplication of hope and healing. That evening, Alexander and Maya walked through their neighborhood. They'd bought a modest house 3 blocks from Elena's apartment, choosing proximity to family over luxury. Their home was comfortable but not ostentatious, filled with books, photographs, and the warmth of genuine contentment. "Do you ever miss it?" Maya asked as they sat on their front porch, watching neighbors walk their dogs and children play in the street. "The penthouse, the fancy restaurants, the glamorous life?" Alexander considered the question seriously. "I miss the simplicity of having unlimited resources. But I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss feeling like I was living someone else's life." "And now?" Now I feel like I'm living the life I was meant to live, with the person I was meant to love. Maya smiled, the expression radiant in the evening light. Even though I had nothing to offer when we met, you had everything to offer. You just didn't know it yet. As they sat together on their modest porch, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He'd started as a man who had everything money could buy, but nothing money couldn't buy. Maya had taught him that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts, but in the richness of relationships, the satisfaction of meaningful work, and the peace that came from living authentically. Every woman in the city had dreamed of capturing Alexander Blackwood's attention, offering him beauty, status, and sophistication. But Maya, who had offered him nothing but honesty, kindness, and the chance to be genuinely himself, had captured something far more valuable: his heart. In the end, the billionaire who could have had anyone had chosen the one person who wanted nothing from him except his authentic presence. And in return, she'd given him everything he'd been searching for: a life worth living and a love worth keeping.